Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to have you here today with our very special guest. Her name is Katy Valentine. The first thing I noticed when I logged on to katyvalentine.com was this, quote, this is her website. Connect to your chakras in 10 minutes or less. Paren, even if you're a Christian. Paren. Okay, so this got my attention because I'm from the old school, in many ways. Astrology and Christianity didn't quite mix in one cup of tea from my lengthy background. So, it's Reverend Doctor in that order.
Reverend Doctor, yeah.
Reverend Doctor, okay. Reverend Dr. Katy is obviously a trailblazer. Hi, Katy.
Hi, I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
You bet. It's easy to call you that. Also, Reverend Dr. Katy is a certified yoga astrologer as of March 2019.
Yay!
Yay! So let's get a few of these pieces out on the table for folks to look at. Katy, tell us, how do astrology, yoga astrology, your training, why you came to me, how does astrology and Christianity fit together?
That's such a good question. And I think the common understanding, even among Christians, is that they must not go together. And I can certainly remember being probably in high school and learning that no Christian king in the Middle Ages would have dared to set an important date, like a wedding or something important for their country, without consulting an astrologer. And I thought, how can that be for a Christian king? But it turns out that's in fact true. And so it's only until very recent years that Christianity and astrology have separated. And up until just a few hundred years ago, Christians were routinely practicing astrology. Now, I will say that even in the very early days of Christianity, we see a debate about this. So there's been a continuous debate. Wherever there's a debate, though, that tells us what people are doing and what they're not doing. And so how these go together for someone like me is that Christians acknowledge God as the creator of the entire universe, everything that the universe encompasses, all that we know, all that we don't know. We are part of that universe. I am part of that universe. And the stars and the planets that surround planet Earth are also part of that universe. And they can be used to as part of the guidance system that God puts into place for us. By no means do we say that astrology supersedes God, but that God uses astrology, the stars. Astrology simply means the study of the stars, as part of our kind of learning here on Earth. So the simple answer for me is that that's how they go together.
That's awesome. So would you say that God or source or whatever Christians or non-Christians, spiritual people call the power, would you say the source or God communicates with us humans through astrology?
Sure. And for me, astrology helps tell me more about who I am and who God created me to be. And when I find when I fight things that I've learned about astrology, that I'm really fighting myself and I'm fighting God's creation. And so I'm part of the system that is, encompasses all of us, all of God, and the stars. And that sure, that's one way that God can communicate to us and let us find out more about ourselves and why we're here and what we're here to do.
Precisely. And isn't that a major question that folks tend to carry around? Some people, some people have the luxury, in a sense, to wonder, what the hell am I doing here? Why
I find if we're asking that question, then we're here to ask that question.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's no more important question, I think, that we can ask as humans. It helps us, figure out our purpose and our vocation and how we live that out in mundane and non-mundane parts of our life. And, astrology can be part of that, even for a very faithful Christian.
Wonderful. I want to go back just a couple of sentences here and ask you if you can give us an example of what you said about fighting yourself. If you're fighting something astrology-wise, then you find you're fighting yourself. What can you give me an example from your personal journey?
Yeah, you bet. So one of the things I've learned is studying my chart, studying this Yogastrology this year, I attract a lot of people who want to over-explain things to me. And for women, we call this mansplaining when a man does it to a woman, right? So a man will try to explain to me exactly things that I already know. or things about me or about my life. And actually in studying my chart, I was like, oh, I'm one of the people that's supposed to help kind of break down that system and gently, gently explain back to people why that kind of behavior is not welcome or not appropriate, and help redirect their energy. Because I find when people over-explain something to someone that they already know, it's really not about the other person. It's about their own inner self. And so just in looking at my chart, in studying with my mentor, I was like, oh, well, so now I can redirect that energy whenever it's given to me, which is a lot of the time, and help people live into their fullest selves where they're not doing that to the world. That doesn't create like the best high vibration world that we need to live in. And as a Christian, I believe in breaking down barriers that separate people, and that's a huge one. And that's one that's part of my chart.
Amen to that. Whatever your spiritual, religious belief is, whoever you are listening to this, amen to that. The connection, our connection with one another. Katy and I, Katy and her followers, I'll say, my students and I, the whole community, and how we're connected beyond just, not to minimize, beyond the human connection, we're connected to this entire system of the sun rising and setting and where we are on earth and the seasons. The entire system is so incredibly gorgeously articulated. And that's probably my 3-second elevator talk about what Yogastrology is. And let's get in sync with, or at least pay some attention to.
Yeah, and astrology and Yogastrology help me and the clients that I serve to go with that rhythm instead of fight against that rhythm.
Exactly. Yeah, just smooths out our life. So you are doing amazing things, obviously, with your life and with your Yogastrology year-long training. Tell us about that. What are you doing with your year-long Yogastrology training, if you care to?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. So I'm nearing the end. I have about 3 months, 2.5, 3 months to go. And so I am keeping up pace, learning about all the signs, learning about chart reading, learning about, like we said, the intricate systems, how they all go together, learning about myself personally, which is always fun. And then with clients, so I serve clients who are interested in bringing metaphysics into their Christian faith journey. And questions about astrology come up all the time. And before about a year and a half ago, I would say, let me find some website that can help with that. And so I didn't have a lot of personal knowledge to answer that with. And now I help clients read their charts. I can gently kind of prescribe or suggest yoga poses that may assist them as they're letting go of old things, embracing new things. And in fact, just this weekend, I had 3 requests come into my personal inbox for me to help people with their natal charts. And so I'm doing it hands-on every day with people who are interested in bringing this part of the system, as we've been saying, into their own Christian faith journey. And so that's really, really rewarding. So those are some of the things I've been doing, and I anticipate that they'll go even further, in years to come.
I do too. Astrology is amazing in that way, and yoga as well. I mean, I've been involved with yoga, training, practice, study, immersion for a good 40 years, and astrology a few less years, not quite 40, but still a very long time. And still, I mean, this weekend, like you had a story about just this weekend, I figured out something or noticed, or it revealed itself to me about my chart. And as you can imagine, I've studied my own chart ad infinitum for years, and with many people's assistance and insight. And so anyway, it's an ever unfolding, multi-layer, rich way to be involved and connected with one another and with the whole system. Astrology and yoga together.
I love that. And for Christians, part of our faith journey is that it's never at a standstill, and we're always diving deeper into who we are and who God calls us to be. And just like an astrology chart, we're always finding out new things about ourselves. And those two things are very compatible to me. That, a natal astrology chart will tell us a lot about ourselves. It doesn't rule us, but it helps us live into more deeply who God created us to be, so that we're not busy trying to be other people, which I see so many people doing all the time. And as a waste of energy, right? Instead of being exactly the creations that God calls us to be.
Isn't that a lesson to assume in one's life, to actually move into being ourselves, as opposed to what we're, but for whatever reason, adopting from other places of who we're supposed to be to truly step into. And you're doing it, obviously. I mean, you're opening up a niche, which you're both carving for yourself and settling into, because it's obviously already there for you, who you are as the doctor, excuse me, Reverend Doctor. Let me pause right there and ask you, what does that stand for, Reverend Doctor? Why is it in that order? What does it mean?
Sure. Yeah, it's in that order because my identity as a reverend, as a pastor, as an ordained minister comes first and foremost beyond my education, which is what the doctor stands for. But I can speak a little bit about both of those. So I'm an ordained minister, and my denomination is the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I do not represent the Christian Church Disciples of Christ or their views, but we're a really nice Protestant denomination. So I'm an ordained minister within that tradition and have been for several years. And I also have a PhD. So I have a PhD in New Testament studies, and I study ancient texts and their ancient context and how they relate to us today. And I have research in many different areas these days, and one of them is astronomy. So just this astronomy and astrology. And I was just reading this morning about ancient Jews and ancient Christians and how they had zodiac charts and how they were using astrology. So I do that in the original ancient languages and try to bring that knowledge to help people's real lives today.
Very good. Thank you for explaining that and describing just a bit about it. And something similar happened to me. I didn't know the connection between yoga and astrology. This is going back several years, but it came to me in a yagna fire ceremony in India. India just floated through my mind. When there was nothing in my mind, I was completely in the moment, open-minded and feeling blissful. And in came this little thought, there's some connection between yoga and astrology, huh? What? So several years, and it revealed itself, and things came to me like, oh, this has been happening for a very long time. So to bring it back out into the world, somewhat similar to what you're doing, to bring back the connection into the world so that people can make use of that for wellness and radiance and empowerment and transformation today, and self-understanding. So one more question, Katie, if you have time, do you?
Yes, of course.
Oh, great. So you have a very curious and I think incredibly unique niche that you are carving, and as I just tried to talk about a tiny bit, you're stepping into. It's already there, right? You're both making it happen and it's making you happen.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes, that's a wonderful way to describe it.
I want to ask you a question that I think is going to be extremely helpful for the unique individuals that are called to tune in to watch what we're talking about today, to see our faces and hear our voices. Katie, what helps you stay strong and feel connected and be the trailblazer? What helps you personally stay strong?
That's such a great question. And when you were telling your story just a moment or two ago, that the answer came to me, before I even knew that you would be asking this particular question, when you described your own kind of moment of knowing. So spiritual practice. Spiritual practice is what keeps me centered and present and tuned in to God and to God's consciousness and what God would have me be doing here on earth today and over the course of my lifetime. And when you described the fire ceremony, you've described to me a moment of spiritual practice that maybe you had been doing for a long time. And then after we do these for many weeks, months, years at a time, we start to see the fruit of them. So I see Yogastrology, yoga and astrology separately and together as one of those spiritual practices. Life is much better when I go to yoga. It helps calm my mind. It helps connect my spirit. It helps ground me. Life is also better when I'm paying attention to the moon and the stars and the planets and their effect not only on me, but on the community whom I serve. And when people tell me, gosh, energy feels crazy right now, I have this great answer for them about why energy may feel a little crazy to them or intense or low at that moment in their lives. So for me, it's those spiritual practices help keep me rooted in what I'm supposed to be doing, how I'm supposed to be serving, and the social justice work that God has me doing at this moment in time.
Beautiful. I love that you said your service is what is part of your spiritual practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And may everyone be more and more blessed in that way, to be called to serve their community and their own life, our own lives in ways that are spiritually grounded and supportive, healthy
Yes,
people.
and I
Yeah.
find so many people are so eager to find out their life purpose, but they're almost flying apart at the seams without having that kind of spiritual groundedness.
Mm.
So whatever people need to do to find that, and yeah, I think yoga astrology is a great way to begin. It's when we do the practice that we discover the purpose. It's not the other way around.
Absolutely. Say that
Mhm.
again. When we do.
Mhm. When we do the practices, that's when we discover purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's similar to happiness. If you just think, I'm gonna do whatever it's gonna take for me to get happy. If you do your service, if you do your work, if you do your practices, practice, 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 and all is coming. And then that's when it reveals your purpose, your reason for being, your sustenance is available to you.
Yes, and it may happen in this flash, like you had, that yoga and astrology go together, and it may build slowly. What we know is that if we keep practicing, that it's sure to come.
Oh, that is so good to remember that. I want to add here, as we're moving toward closing for today, that astrology is, as we're discussing in all these different ways, so incredible and revelatory and consuming, and chapter upon chapter unfolds in front of our very eyes and in our consciousness. And to have all that without the yoga, without the grounding and the embodiment of the body zodiac
Mhm.
correlations and all the other practices that yoga astrology has created,
Mhm.
uh, it can be rather heady and you can get kind of far out there, So bringing it back into the body, embodying the astrological wisdom, it's another practice. It helps keep us strong, sane, and service oriented, as well as healthy and happier.
Yeah, absolutely. And when Christians talk about the body being the temple of Christ, the temple of God, that's so important. And yoga is one way that we honor that temple aspect of ourselves, and like you said, become grounded and able to be of service to ourselves and to others.
Beautiful. You're such a great articulator. You're very skillful and um, elegant delivery of how you speak to people. I can imagine you, I guess it's called the pulpit, standing in a church. Yeah.
I am in the pulpit from time to time, yeah, giving sermons, and in the classroom at other times, and it's all in my chart. It's all in my chart anyway. So
I wish we could talk a lot about that and bring your chart in and take a look at it. So maybe we'll be able to come back together at another time. For today, I don't want to keep you. I know you have a very busy schedule. Thank you, Katie, so much for coming on board and sharing so willingly today. Thank you.
thank you for inviting me. I appreciate everything.
Namaste.
Namaste.